Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 2024 Academy Award nominations, and quite frankly I wasn't going to make this video at first. That's why it's a little bit late compared to everybody else's videos on it, but there's been a couple things about the nominations this year that couldn't get out of my head, and I just want to get it all out there, make this video. If it doesn't catch on, oh well, nobody will watch this anyway and it'll be fine. But if you guys do watch this video and you're curious to see my thoughts on the good, the bad, and the unrecognized films at this year's Oscars, well, let's just jump into it. First off, let's talk about the good. And the first thing I want to talk about is probably my biggest surprise, which was American Fiction getting 5 nominations at the Academy Awards this year. And the reason why I'm surprised is I absolutely loved the movie, but it felt like it was going to be one of those movies that was going to go under the radar and it wasn't going to get the appreciation that it deserved. But, you know, it got nominated for Best Picture, which I'm very happy that it was nominated for Best Picture, but also got Best Supporting Actor and Best Actor, which I'm extremely happy about. Of course, Jeffrey Wright was phenomenal in this movie, and honestly, I think it's one of his best performances to date. But the biggest surprise was Sterling K. Brown in the Best Supporting Actor race, which honestly, this Best Supporting Actor race is insane this year. I think every single person nominated here deserved these nominations, and I do think that this award is probably going to go to Robert Downey Jr., which extremely deserved for him there. But, you know, Mark Ruffalo being on here, I was worried it was going to go to Willem Dafoe instead of Mark Ruffalo, but I'm glad Mark Ruffalo got the nod for Poor Things, and Sterling K. Brown for this movie, which was I'm extremely happy about. American Fiction was also nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, which I do think the script is one of the best parts about this film, and is also nominated for Best Original Score because apparently the score in this movie is better than Across the Spider-Verse. The Best Picture category of this year is actually pretty great. I've seen 9 of the 10 films. And in terms of Academy firsts, you know, we have 3 films this year that were directed by women in our Best Picture category with, of course, Anatomy of a Fall, Barbie, and Past Lives. All 3 films which made my favorite films of the year last year. And, you know, a lot of these Best Picture movies actually made my favorites of last year. So if you want to hear more thoughts on these in specific, go check out my Best Movies of 2023 video. I had a lot of fun talking about a lot of these. And so in that way, I'm very happy with our set of films for this year. I think there's a lot of great range in terms of the popular, the very, you know, blockbuster type movies like Oppenheimer and Barbie that's kind of broke out into the world in a culturally phenomenal way. And we got a lot of great indie films, a lot of movies that people haven't heard of too much, like Anatomy of a Fall and Past Lives, which I think are 2 of my favorites in this category this year. So a lot to love with our Best Picture category, and really not much to complain about here. And really I can say that about all the nominations this year. There isn't really one person that was nominated that I think wasn't deserving of that nomination, because I think we got a really strong pool of films this year. It wasn't as much of a variety of films as it was in recent years, but we have a narrow set of films, a very specific set of films that are all deserving of these awards. I think the biggest issue with this year's Academy Awards is some of the omissions that were made. Now on to the bad, because I want to talk about the Best Actress category here. And honestly, I should have filmed my live reaction to the Oscar nominations this year, because my reaction to this category in particular must have been pretty funny, because they started, you know, announcing the nominations one at a time. You have Annette Bening from Nyad, who I've not seen Nyad yet. I've heard great things about the performances here, so I can't speak on whether she is deserving of this spot or not over some other people that were omitted from this category. So we have Annette Bening here. We also have Lily Gladstone from Killers of the Flower Moon, who I think is the obvious lock for who's going to win this category. Even if, you know, the category was different and some other people were included here that weren't included here, I still think that Lily Gladstone would walk away with the trophy at the end of the ceremony. And we have Sandra Hüller from Anatomy of a Fall, who, you know, I've talked about that movie a lot, especially in my best movies of 2023 list. And Sandra Hüller was phenomenal in the film. I think she's also very deserving of, you know, having a spot amongst all these women in this category. Carey Mulligan was also nominated for her work in Maestro, and honestly, if she wasn't in that film and her performance didn't stand out as much as it did, I don't think that movie would have made my best movies of 2023 list. But with her performance in there and how great she was and how much I enjoyed her role in that film, I did really like that movie, and I'm really glad that Carey Mulligan is getting recognized for her role in Maestro. But then we are left with the final slot in, you know, the 5 people that are going to be nominated for this category, and in my head as I'm watching this live, I'm like, oh my god, the 2 people that I thought were an absolute lock were Emma Stone in Poor Things and Margot Robbie in Barbie. They were 2 people that I was like, oh, they're definitely going to be nominated. Who's going to fill out the rest of the 5 nominations? And now you leave the final spots between these 2 women, which is absolutely insane. I was going nuts in the 10 seconds that I was trying to wrap my head around who is going to be picked for this final slots. And of course, it went to Emma Stone in Poor Things, which I've talked a lot about Poor Things. I have a review out for that movie on my channel here, and Emma Stone is phenomenal in that film. I do think that she is very much worthy of that final spot here for Best Actress, but Margot Robbie not being nominated for Best Actress here was really the biggest, I guess the first big shock in the announcements that really got me scratching my head. And this also followed America Ferrera being nominated for Best Supporting Actress and Ryan Gosling being nominated for Best Supporting Actor, which honestly I'm happy that both of them got nominated in each of their own categories. And I guess the thing that's really bothering me the most about this is, yeah, sure, Ryan Gosling made me laugh a lot in the Barbie movie, and he was easily one of the standouts. I loved him in Barbie, but it's one thing to make somebody laugh. It's a completely other thing to make somebody absolutely cry in the theater. And I think Margot Robbie's performance was really touching in the Barbie movie. And honestly, that movie would not exist how it was without Margot Robbie being producer of the film and also starring in the film. And of course, the director, Greta Gerwig. For director, we have Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest, Yorgos Lanthimos for Poor Things, Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer, which honestly I think is his award to lose this year, Martin Scorsese for Killers of the Flower Moon, okay, I guess, and Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall. No Greta Gerwig for Barbie. Now, this is extremely frustrating for me, but honestly, not surprising, unfortunately. A couple days ago, there's a quote from Oliver Stone saying that he thought that Ryan Gosling was wasting his time working on films like Barbie, that it was an unserious role, and for him to be seen as a serious actor, he needs to be taking serious roles. And this is just one of the most outright misogynistic and sexist quotes about this film, and is extremely dismissive to Barbie as a film, which I think is the reason why it was not nominated, because Oliver Stone is one of those people in the voting body for the Directors Guild making those nominations for directors at the Academy Awards. And with that mentality clearly being a thing, with so many people probably dismissing the Barbie movie just based on the fact that it's called Barbie, and the preconceived notions of what that movie was, even for general audiences before this movie came out, how there's even people in my family where it's like, oh, I'm excited for the Barbie movie, and they were like, what? And they were scratching their head wondering why in the world I was excited for Barbie, but that's because of Greta Gerwig as the director of this film. Now, some people are saying that Justine Triet took away that spot from Greta Gerwig, but I also agree with the people saying that why does there only need to be one spot designated for a woman directing films for this category? It makes absolutely no sense, because I don't think she was the only woman that was snubbed for this Best Director role, because we also have Celine Song for Past Lives, which I already kind of expressed my love for Past Lives. It was my second favorite movie, or was it third favorite movie of the year last year? Either way, it was in my top 3 movies of 2023. I thought she did a phenomenal job directing that film, and she was also not, nominated for this category. And here's my pitch for you guys, which I think is what I want to ask you the most about these nominations, is should there be a change to how the Best Director race is in the Oscars? I've been saying for a couple years now that they should expand the Best Directors category in a similar way to what they did with Best Picture a few years ago. And before you immediately dismiss this idea, like people did when they expanded Best Picture, saying things like, oh, you're making the category bigger just to include other films, to be inclusive for the sake of inclusive, and it's making this category less special because less films or more films are being nominated for it, and it makes being nominated mean less for the people that are nominated. But I'd have so much pushback for that argument, because we have 10 films every year that are nominated for Best Picture. We have 20 people that are nominated for acting. We have 15 nominees for short films. We have 10 nominees for writers. Hell, at one point there were 10 nominees for just sound itself. And if I really want to be an asshole, there are still 15 nominees for sound if you include score, sound, and original song in one category. Yet there are only 5 spots for directors, which you wouldn't have any of these movies without directors. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a full category of 10 like Best Picture is, because when Best Picture was first expanded, it wasn't like that. It was like, okay, up to 10 films can be nominated, but doesn't mean 10 films will always be nominated. Some years, there'll be 7, some years there'll be 8, some years there'll be 9, or something like that. And I think that is what they should do with the directing category. Maybe not all the way up to 10. Maybe there's a max of 8 people can be nominated for Best Director, and hell, maybe one year there's only 5 like there was this year, or maybe we have 7 that were this year if you include Greta Gerwig and Celine Song, or maybe 8 if you include Ava DuVernay for Origin, or some other films like that. I think that would be a great way to expand this category, to make it a little more in line with the other awards that are given in the ceremony. And I think this would really help include other films that are worthy of being nominated, and it will stop situations like this happening with people like Oliver Stone completely dismissing the movie Barbie because of the reasons that he gave, because clearly he did not watch this Barbie movie. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in the Directors Guild, voting body that did not even care to watch this movie because, well, it's a Barbie movie. And I think that this would help avoid situations like this, and situations like in the past where there have been no female directors nominated for Best Picture or Best Director in either of these categories. And I don't know. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on whether expanding the Best Directors category is a good solution for stuff like this. But speaking of absolutely baffling omissions from this year's Academy Awards, let's talk about some films that were not nominated whatsoever that I do want to highlight in this video, because of course every single year, not every single film can be nominated for all the awards that you would like. And the first one that I want to talk about is of course The Iron Claw and Zac Efron for Best Actor. I absolutely loved The Iron Claw. This was a movie that's, I was hearing some buzz around, but I wasn't really too excited to watch this movie because I don't really care about wrestling. I didn't know anything about the true story going into this, but then I watched the film and it is absolutely devastating. And I think of every singular line throughout all of film in the year of 2023, the line that got me emotional the most was Zac Efron saying that he's no longer a brother. That movie was emotionally draining in all the best ways possible, and I do think that it is deserving of awards, specifically for Zac Efron, but if it squeezed in some other spots like held director or best picture, I would have been very happy with that. But if you haven't seen The Iron Claw, it is very much worth you checking out. Origin is another film that I mentioned a little bit earlier with Ava DuVernay as director and Anjanou Ellis-Taylor, who I think easily could have been in the race for Best Actress if this movie was pushed for awards season a little bit earlier in December. And I absolutely love this movie. It explores this writer who's exploring this idea of a caste system, a system that kind of compares and contrasts the experiences of racism in America going all the way back from slavery to today's world of discrimination to, Nazi Germany and that's genocide of Jewish people in World War II, to even Dalits in India, who are also seen as the bottom of the hierarchy in that caste system. It also explores this main character in her grief and how her grief is inspiring her to look into all these things and how it ties together to her personal, more individual story to a grander scale story across the world and all these different ideas. And I think it's a great movie that explores an interesting thesis that I think maybe even could be taught in schools one day, and even kind of blurs the line between a narrative filmmaking structure with a documentary style structure with even some surreal aspects in the film. It really does play a lot with style as well, which again, the directing in this film was easily worthy of another slot in the Best Directors category, with Ava DuVernay possibly getting one of them. And I don't know, I just think that this is another movie that if you haven't checked out at this point, you should go check it out. All of Us Strangers is another film that I think a lot of people were hoping would get a nomination for Best Actor for Andrew Scott in this film. And I talk about this movie more in depth in my Best Movies of 2023 list. I absolutely loved this film, and the amount of sniffles heard throughout my packed auditorium watching this movie is almost comical if it wasn't for the absolutely emotionally draining story that was playing out on the screen. I would absolutely recommend you guys go check out All of Us Strangers. And hell, I'll even mention Saltburn. I do think that Saltburn may be a little bit too divisive for a larger voting pool to kind of get around this movie in one way, whether it was for Best Picture or any of the performances here. But if anything, I think that Barry Keoghan was great in this film. Same thing with Rosamund Pike. And I do think that either of them being nominated for whatever category they would have gone for would have been very deserving. But even more so, I do think that if Saltburn got any recognition at all this year, it would have been for cinematography, because this is one amazing looking movie. Of course, there's Dream Scenario for Nick Cage, production design in Asteroid City, Daniel Pemberton's score in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and Beyond Utopia for documentary, and of course, Godzilla Minus One for literally every single category. I would have been happy if that one got nominated more than just, Best Visual Effects, which very deserving, by the way. But there are so many films that came out this past year that are deserving of your time to go check out, to go celebrate them in their own ways. You don't need them to be nominated for, accolades to be able to get the attention that they deserve. And I think that is the lesson that I want to walk away with this is, yes, it's upsetting and honestly really frustrating that Barbie was not recognized for actress or best director, but that movie made the most money of any movie in 2023. It was culturally, phenomenal. It made so much more of an impact of every other film that came out last year that it's going to have a longer lasting impact than just one directing nod. And even though I do very much wish that Greta Gerwig got that recognition, I think she is a name that's going to stick around for a long time, partly because of her work in the past, partly because of Barbie, but all of her talent is the reason why she's going to get all of that, recognition in the future and the excitement around her films in the future. And so those are just going to be my thoughts on the Academy Awards nominations this year. There's a lot of stuff that I didn't talk about. So of course, in the future, I'm going to do a video that's going to be my predictions for who's going to win all these categories. And usually I do pretty decent at my predictions, but hopefully this year I beat my record. I think my record is maybe like 16 or 17 correct out of the 23 categories. So let's see if I can do better later on this year. And of course, if you did enjoy this video, make sure you guys leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment down below of what you think about expanding the Best Directors category. I honestly think it is a pretty good idea, but I'm curious to hear if you agree with me. But that's going to be it for this video. Thanks guys for watching. Like I said, leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this one. And I hope to see you all in my next one.